Welcome to the Martech Cube Let's Talk podcast. With the Martech space evolving at a phenomenal level, it gets extremely rattling to keep track of each and every update on both the Martech stack as well as marketing knowledge treasury. In such excruciating times, the advice from the Martech mavens comes in handy. Martech Cube's Let's Talk series is just that knight in the shining armor and focuses on a range of topics from the Martech arena. We bring in the industry mavens to venture out your queries on the same space, get inside tricks, trends, and practical know-how from the top minds in the marketing technology space. Tune in now. In today's podcast, we are going to cover various aspects of CDP along with discussing the underutilization of the customer data platform. With that being said, we are also going to discuss how marketing teams can gear up in order to personalize the customer interactions across the entire customer journey map.
One of the biggest problems was simply getting access to that data and then pulling it together and unifying it so that you could recognize it.
People started buying so much technology and using so less of it that they just kept piling on with the Martech tools and on the Martech stack. And
mostly because very few companies even now really have that data under control. Of course.
Why do you think that customer data was being severely underutilized? On the offside, we are also going to touch base on the seemingly urban marketers' problem of piling onto the Martech stack and how it can be solved on both operational and implementational level. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Martech Cube podcast. Joining us today would be David Raab. David Raab is a market technology expert. He's an independent consultant and I think author of literally thousands of articles on the subject of Martech analytics and customer data platform. He's the founder of Customer Data Platform Institute and is related to the coinage of the term customer data platform. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I would really like to start the podcast by asking you the most preliminary question. Why do you think when you started with customer data and marketing, why do you think that customer data was being severely underutilized?
Well, the challenge with customer data has been multifold actually, but perhaps the core challenge certainly with the customer data platform is that the data has not been easily accessible to marketers. Mm-hmm. So that it was trapped in this system or in that system. Some of those systems didn't have very good tools, but even if they did have good tools to analyze the data was only the data that that system captured, which you would ideally have related to useful data that was captured in other systems. So bringing that data together was something that often a data scientist would have to do or an IT person would have to do, and was a very painful kind of manual job. And then you had to do it all over again next week when you had some other projects. So that was one of the biggest problems was simply getting access to that data and then pulling it together and unifying it so that you could recognize that this email over here related to that phone number over there, related to that web cookie over here. So there was a number of issues that come down to data integration and combination.
Okay. And I also wanted to access the conjunctions of sales and marketing as functions. As functions, they are quite interrelated. But where do you think that sales and marketing truly intertwine to provide an omnichannel experience to the customer?
Well, particularly in B2B, what we find is that the salespeople are talking to their prospects at the same time that the marketing people are talking to them. So you really do have this issue of the need to coordinate the messages. The change in behavior that we've seen over the last decade or so has been that buyers can increasingly engage on the website in particular, and research the company without talking to salespeople. So they further and further down the buying process before they even reach out to sales. So it's really important that marketing be deliver messages that are appropriate so that when they do finally get around to talking to the salespeople, the people have been educated properly and reached out properly. And because so much of those interactions are not just sort of one-time queries, but really part of a process or a sequence of messages that are delivered through the website or through email. Those are messages that marketing controls, but again, they're very, very important to salespeople. Those be the right messages.
Okay. And I also wanted to ask, dive a little deeper into this by asking you, currently the entire focus has been shifted to just automating the entire process and, being like converting your lead in the fastest possible manner. So do you think somewhere down the line that, in utilizing and maybe overutilizing the customer data, we are losing the actual essence of caring about our customers in bringing or roping them in the entire procedure?
Well, I don't know that I'd agree that we've been focused obsessively on automating for the sake of automation. There are many more points of interaction now, and there are many more interactions themselves through each of those different channels that have to be done, and there's too many to not automate it. So, you want to have a personalized website. You're not going to have somebody sitting on the other end saying, oh, here's this website visitor. I'm going to decide what to say to them manually. I mean, you can do that in a web chat, but that's not going to be for every visitor. That's just because for those who choose to chat with you. So you have to automate. It's simply an imperative, again, to give the customer a good experience. That being said, the automation doesn't have to be bad automation. Good automation will feel very personalized and will be very personalized. So and very caring and dare we say human. So I don't think that it's a question of automate versus not automate. I think it's a question of automate well versus automate poorly.
Okay, that's a rather interesting take on this. And also, what, according to you, are some of the improvements that the marketing teams can gear up to in order to personalize the customer interactions, across the entire customer journey map?
How much time do we have? There are a lot of things that they
Yeah,
can
I
do.
just want you to cover in a nutshell. I know you can speak on this like for hours together.
Really.
Yeah.
Certainly getting their data organized and accessible is a major improvement for most people, because very few companies even now really have that data under control, although of course it's getting better. But I think beyond that, I think there's a lot of analytical work to be done that can, again, guide those automated decisions to observe the customer's behavior or the prospect's behavior, and to try to understand what they're trying to accomplish. So much of what we do, getting back actually to your earlier question, really is about serving the customer, serving the prospect, giving them what they need to solve their problems. And hopefully that results in a sale for us because we have a problem or a product that solves their problem. Otherwise, we shouldn't sell it to them. And I think most people really don't want to sell someone a product that doesn't really solve their problem. It's a matter of ethics, but it's also just a matter, honestly, of good business practice, because you're just going to end up with unhappy customers who are going to churn anyway. So there's really no point to selling somebody something they shouldn't be buying. So that is much more of a service attitude. And again, that gets back to the point that it's marketing and sales, and even post-sales, even the actual service people themselves who are critical for renewals, all need to cooperate and all need to give the customer a good experience. So there's a lot that can be done that is more of that service orientation, convenience for the customer, ease of use for the customer, speed for the customer, that it would not be considered, traditional marketing things.
That's great. And I also wanted to ask you, there has been, this is kind of a debate actually. There are a certain set, the marketing has seen a divide, and people have varied opinions that, whether the entire marketing channelization is seeing a major slump, or is it heading for a speedy evolution post the pandemic, since we are going to, obviously, we are everybody is trying to fit in the brigade of virtualization, and trying their best to keep up the entire race going. So what is your opinion, whether like the marketing is going to see a wave of revolution post the pandemic, or is it going to see a major slump before and amidst and post the pandemic?
Well, I think marketing will do whatever the larger economy does. If there's a major economic slump, then marketing budgets will be cut. It's rather inevitable. And on the other hand, if we all bounce back vigorously, then marketing will bounce back as well. There was a very sharp contraction in advertising, and advertising and marketing aren't quite the same thing, but advertising is about a large chunk of marketing, where people just cut back in the initial stages when honestly they just froze like the proverbial deer in the headlights. Now that advertising spending is creeping back, and marketers are also beginning to realize that they can have additional messaging. A lot of the initial messaging back in March and April was just, oh, we're here for you, we care about you, and we're really not going to try to sell you anything right now. And now marketers are being marketers. They can't do that forever. It just goes against the grain. So they're now creeping back into selling you things as they should. So, the question is not whether the marketers will do marketing. Of course, they'll do marketing. The question is how much it will change, because it will change. I mean, there's no question that people are doing way more online, and that's not going to go back. There's plenty of research to that. And they become more savvy about online. We used to, as marketers, do many, many webinars, and I think people are kind of like bored with webinars, right? They've seen too many. So now they're looking for more interaction, more just creative, more intriguing, more engaging marketing. And marketers, I have no doubt, will step up to that challenge. Marketers are inherently creative people, and now we've locked them all in a room with nothing else to do, but think about what they would like to do. So I'm sure that there are many clever things that are, germinating in many an apartment as we speak, that hopefully will create a new age of brilliant marketing genius innovation. Can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of right. Also, coming to CDP. Now, when CDP was launched and, when it has been used extensively, the main tagline, I would say, it was used for is, marketers have more data available than ever, but they always struggle to pull it together into a usable and actionable format. So CDP always offered the promise to solve this problem as a go-to. But why do marketers always have the doubt about CDP? Like, why do marketers, technologists, and executives who have not worked or has brought in CDP into their functionality have that first doubt that can CDP really deliver on this promise? Why do you think, from where does that doubt crop from?
Who are these people with doubt? Have them call me. But I suppose there are still a few out there who
Yeah,
doubt.
there are.
Well, I think that realistically they've tried many technical things, other technologies that don't always necessarily deliver everything that's promised. So there's been a little bit of painful experience that they're reacting to. And even specifically in this area of customer data unification, a lot of the DMPs promised that they were going to unify their first party data. And well, it turned out you can't do that in a DMP. So marketers are like, oh, well, these CDP guys are telling me the same thing the DMP guys did, and the DMPs couldn't do it. So why should I believe the CDP guys? And that's an entirely fair question.
Exactly.
The short answer to that is, well, it's a different technology, and it's one that's actually designed from the start to do that, and DMPs were not designed from the start to do that. It just seemed like something that those clever marketers thought they could get away with saying. But I mean, it's legitimate. People should be skeptical. You should be skeptical of any claim. Well, really about anything, but certainly about technology. There's a lot of wishful thinking among marketers. I really have this problem, and if someone claims to solve it, or even seems to claim to solve it, because I kind of hear what I want to hear, even if the marketer's not quite saying that to me, then they get all excited and they buy it. And then, of course, once they try it, well, it turns out that it's not perfect. It has some limitations. It might not even be what I thought it was. And the other thing, so there's that. There's wishful thinking on the part of the buyers. There's over promotion on the part of the sellers. But there's also, realistically, mistakes that are made at the implementation level. We see
Exactly.
a lot of projects where people buy a tool and then they don't use it properly. I was just having this conversation
Yeah.
with someone the other day, and big company, and they were using one of the CDPs that was perfectly
Hmm.
capable of meeting their needs, but it had been installed wrong. The people who installed it, which were the company's internal people, not the CDP vendor people, just plain set it up wrong, and then it couldn't do what was needed. Well, wasn't anybody's fault except the people who installed it wrong.
Installed it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that, and we've seen that in other technology, marketing automation. You had a lot of people buy and then not use them properly. So
Yeah.
nothing unique to CDPs about that, but it's much easier to buy these things than to learn how to use them well.
Yeah, I think that's why we started discussing a lot on like marketers overall and overall, like editors like us or content creators, they started discussing this topic a lot, the pylon of Martech stack. So that's what made way for it, because people started buying so much technology and using so less of it that they just kept piling on with the Martech tools and on the Martech stack, and it just created a heap that never went used, and neither were they able to utilize any of the existing data. So then they started questioning the tools and everything in place, but actually the entire implementation order was in reverse. So that's why it wasn't ever successful, this practice of piling on to your Martech stack.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's very easy to buy software, especially if it's software as a service. You just
Yeah.
kind of basically just write a check or put it in a credit card. And again, people will see a promise made, or they'll think they'll see a promise made, and they get excited and they'll oh, sign me right up, and then they'll
Yeah.
do it. And then if it doesn't work immediately, they don't invest the time to use it well. So that is a big problem. And it's across the space. People are getting much smarter. I mean,
Yeah.
we are very impatient, particularly right now. It's just as a I wasn't going to say a culture or society because it's global, right?
Hmm.
But we're just, everyone's very impatient now. They don't want to give things time. They do it. They try. If it doesn't work, go on to the next thing. There's
Yeah.
somehow that's considered to be a virtue, but it's maybe there are places for that, but it is better actually to slow down a little and kind of work with the things you have,
Hmm.
rather than just tossing them away if they don't immediately solve their problems. Doesn't mean they can't solve it. It just means you have to work at it a bit.
Hmm. Yeah. Also, I really wanted to ask you about the human aspect of marketing. So, do you think that, with times of global crisis like this, we need to humanize marketing and explore the customer sentiment in a rational manner other than just putting it out there on their face? Especially, there were certain elements that we have seen in the recent past about like marketing campaigns were run on the basis of certain communal events that happened and everything. So do you think that we really need to sit back, like take a back seat and analyze what we are doing with our strategy and, how we are putting ourselves out there?
Well, I think we always needed to do that. I don't think
Yeah.
that really has changed. Listening
Hmm.
to your customers has always been the first commandment of marketing, and understanding what
Hmm.
people needed, and then
Hmm.
hopefully delivering it to them and finding which messages resonate and all that. So I don't think that's changed. Maybe it's become a little harder. Maybe the stakes are a little higher now because the things that your customers wanted for a long time that you were kind of used to giving to them and you became habits. Now all of a sudden those habits are no longer appropriate. So we have to go back and maybe listen a little harder for things that we are not expecting to hear. So that may have changed a bit, but the fundamental need to be human and to recognize that your customers are human
Hmm.
is still there. Of course, now a lot of the marketing is not done by or to humans. We market to algorithms, but let's set that aside.
Oh, yeah.
And even that, you got to understand. Even if you're marketing to machines, you got to understand the machines too. So it's really not that different.
Yeah, exactly. And coming to CDP again, now what do you think will be the next strategic evolution in the CDP arena? What will be the next defining move and next defining aspect of it?
Well, it's a fascinating arena to watch. It's evolving very quickly. as everything does these days. What we see right now is we're seeing the big technology companies, the Adobes and Salesforces and Oracles and Microsofts, and SAS and SAP, it could go on, entering the market with products. And it took them kind of a long time for various reasons to recognize that the CDP was just part of what they had to offer to have a complete solution. There were a number of reasons they kind of resisted that notion, or they thought it was just a simple thing. They were just going to build one. And then it took them 3 years because it's harder to build it than it seems. So that's probably going to reshape the market in a fairly major way. And that is happening as we speak. Most of the vendors I just mentioned, have a product that has been released within the past year. So it's just beginning to really kind of impact the marketplace. And along with that, we do see an additional set of vendors who are offering other things that are adding CDP. So e-commerce vendors adding a CDP capability, or email vendors adding a CDP capability, and that also changes who buys it and how they buy it and who sell it. So, we have a number of standalone CDP vendors, and that's their entire business. And some of them have been very successful and are growing very, very quickly. But we also have a lot of small guys, and we're not sure how many of those will survive. But when they do survive, we think most of them are going to be surviving by focusing on particular niche markets. So, financial services or travel or healthcare or whatever it is, because that's really where you can do well as a small focused company and, be better at your little niche than the generic product that I can buy from Adobe or Salesforce or someone.
True. That's correct. And moving on to a lighter note, can you tell us a quote that you swear by, that has always stuck by you and you always remember it in times of crisis?
Tishierish Daishabudish.
Okay, can you translate it for us?
Russian. My grandfather told me that. The slower you go, the faster you get there is roughly what it means. So plan carefully and take your time and then move quickly after you've done your planning, which resonates with me personally. Plus, I like the Russian.
Yeah, that sounded really exciting. That's why I asked for the translation. That was rather inspiring, and I can really resonate this quote with marketing in every aspect. It goes with all situations in life and otherwise. And
Indeed.
This marks us to the end of our podcast. And I really want to thank you a lot, David, for joining us for this wonderful session. We really look forward to hosting you again on Martech Q. And as for our audience, we really hope that you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. We hope to see you all once again next week with a brand new episode of Martech Q podcast with another special guest. And I hope you all tune in then. Please stay safe and stay vigilant.